The Cold War's most dangerous 6 minutes. It's past midnight. You're sitting alone in a bunker, staring at a screen that is telling you the world is about to end. 5 nuclear missiles, launched from the United States, heading straight for the Soviet Union. Every protocol you were trained for says one thing: report it up the chain of command immediately. If you do, the Soviet military launches a full retaliatory strike. Hundreds of missiles. American cities vanish in minutes. Moscow, London, Berlin, gone. Somewhere between 500 million and 1 billion people die before sunrise. But something stops you. Not fear, not confusion, a feeling. And in that moment, in those 6 minutes between detection and decision, one man, sitting alone in a dark room, decided to trust his gut over his training, his instinct over his orders, his doubt over the most sophisticated early warning system the Soviet Union had ever built. His name was Stanislav Petrov. He was a 44-year-old lieutenant colonel. He was not supposed to be working that night. And because of a decision the world wouldn't learn about for more than a decade, you are alive right now. This is the story of the most dangerous 6 minutes in human history.
The world on the edge. To understand what happened on September 26, 1983, you have to understand just how close the world already was to destroying itself. The Cold War had been running for nearly 4 decades by that point. The United States and the Soviet Union had been locked in an ideological arms race that had produced something the world had never seen before: mutually assured destruction. A doctrine so perfectly named that its acronym was MAD. The logic was almost elegant in its horror. If both sides knew that launching nuclear weapons meant their own annihilation, neither side would ever launch. The missiles existed to prevent the missiles from being used. But 1983 was different. 1983 was arguably the most terrifying year of the entire Cold War, and most people living through it didn't fully realize it. Ronald Reagan had entered the White House 2 years earlier on a wave of fierce anti-Soviet rhetoric. He called the USSR what he genuinely believed it was: an evil empire. He wasn't using the phrase as a soundbite. He meant it theologically, morally, as a statement of civilization versus barbarism. The Soviets heard it that way too. Reagan's administration had dramatically accelerated American military spending. New missile systems were being deployed in Western Europe, Pershing II ballistic missiles, fast enough to reach Moscow in under 10 minutes from their launch sites in West Germany. Think about what that meant from the Soviet perspective. 10 minutes. Less time than it takes to watch a television episode. Less time than it takes to make a decision through any kind of deliberate chain of command. The Americans had essentially positioned weapons that removed any margin for error, any possibility of a measured response. Soviet leadership was aging, paranoid, and deeply unwell. Yuri Andropov, the general secretary of the Communist Party, was
The shot that nearly ended the world. And then, on September 1st, 1983, 3 weeks before our story reaches its crisis point, something happened that sent the entire situation spiraling even closer to the edge. Korean Airlines Flight 007, a civilian Boeing 747 carrying 269 passengers and crew, had drifted off course due to a navigational error and accidentally entered Soviet airspace over the Kamchatka Peninsula and Sakhalin Island. Soviet air defense forces tracked it for more than 2 hours and shot it down. All 269 people on board were killed. Among the dead was Lawrence McDonald, a sitting U.S. congressman from Georgia. The international outcry was immediate and overwhelming. Reagan called it a crime against humanity. American networks ran the story around the clock. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session. But here's what's critical to understand about what was happening inside the Soviet military establishment in those weeks. They were shaken.
All units, prepare for evasive maneuvers.
By the American response.
The alarm. The time was 0:15. midnight, Moscow time. Petrov was monitoring the Oko satellite system, a network of infrared satellites positioned in orbit to detect the heat signatures of ballistic missile launches. The system was relatively new. It had been celebrated within the Soviet military establishment as a technological triumph. Petrov, who had been involved in the system's development, knew its capabilities intimately. He also knew its weaknesses. And then, the alarm went off. Not a warning tone, not a caution signal. The loudest, most serious alarm in the entire facility. The one that had never been triggered on a live watch before. One word flashed across the main screen.
We need support
Launch.
on the left flank now.
A single Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile had allegedly been detected launching from a United States military base. The room erupted. Soldiers were shouting. Support staff who had been sitting at secondary consoles spun around in their chairs. The noise level went from quiet routine to controlled chaos in under 3 seconds. Protocol was clear, unambiguous, absolute. If the system detected a launch, the duty officer was to immediately relay the alert up the chain of command. From there, it would reach the Soviet military leadership, and from there, the general secretary. The entire retaliatory apparatus would be set in motion. Petrov picked up the phone, and then he hesitated. One missile? The decision. Let's stay in that room for a moment. Because what happened in Petrov's mind in those 6 minutes deserves more than a summary. He was not a general. He was not a politician. He was not one of the men with their fingers on the actual buttons. He was a duty officer, a human node in a system designed to relay information, not evaluate it. His job was to report, not to judge. But he was judging anyway, furiously, against everything in him that said, follow the protocol, protect yourself, do your job. Here is what he was weighing. The satellite system was new, relatively untested under real combat conditions. He knew from the engineering reports that the infrared sensors could be fooled under specific atmospheric conditions,
no deviation
particularly
from
when
the
sunlight
schedule,
reflected off clouds
regardless
at certain angles.
of the current
He
complications.
knew there had been false positives in testing. Small ones, nothing like this. But the possibility existed. 5 missiles was still an oddly small number. Not 0, which would mean nothing. But 5 was neither nothing nor an overwhelming strike. It was an in-between number, an ambiguous number. Ground-based radar, the other layer of Soviet detection, had not confirmed the launches. The satellites were showing incoming missiles. The radar was showing nothing. In the Soviet early warning system, both layers were supposed to confirm before the highest alert was triggered. They hadn't. Against all of that, against his technical doubts and his strategic skills.
The longest silence. Those next minutes, the minutes after his call, before confirmation either way, were by Petrov's own account, the most terrifying of his life. He sat at his post, he kept his voice calm, he continued doing his job, managing the rest of the facility's systems, answering questions from secondary staff who were watching him with wide eyes, trying
The
to
chain
read
of
in his
error
posture
begins with
whether
the
they were about
sun
to
and
die.
a cloud, leading to
Didn't
this
know if he
false
was right.
signal received by the
Believed
satellite,
he was right.
causing the near
Thought he was
apocalypse.
right. But belief is not certainty. And he was one man. In a bunker. Having just told the Soviet military machine to stand down. Based on an engineering hunch and a tactical instinct that the Americans wouldn't start a nuclear war with 5 missiles. Ground radar continued to show nothing. Minutes passed. And then, silence. No impact reports, no secondary confirmations, no atmospheric detonations detected anywhere. Nothing. The missiles, if they had ever existed, were gone. Because they had never existed. Post-incident investigation. The aftermath nobody wanted to talk about. Here is where the story takes a turn that is quietly
deeply human. Stanislav Petrov did not receive a medal. He did not receive a commendation. He was not paraded through Moscow as the man who saved civilization. He was not given a promotion. He was reprimanded. Because in his post-incident report, investigators discovered that in the chaos of the alarm, Petrov had failed to properly fill out his logbook in real
Tell
time.
us,
A
what was
procedural
going
violation,
through your mind
paperwork error.
when you realized
The Soviet
you
military
had won the
establishment could
prize?
not celebrate Petrov without implicitly acknowledging that their celebrated early warning system, the technological triumph they had invested billions in, had nearly triggered a nuclear war over sunlight. So instead, the whole thing was buried. Petrov was quietly reassigned. He took early retirement shortly after. His nerves, by his own account, were never the same. He suffered what sounds in retrospect like a serious mental breakdown in the months following the incident, spending time in a sanatorium, struggling to process what he had killed. His wife died of cancer in 1997. He lived modestly in a small...
What it means. So what do we do with this story? Because it's not a comfortable one. It doesn't fit the narratives we prefer. We prefer stories where civilization is saved by heroes who knew they were right, by generals who had better intelligence, by diplomats who found the elegant compromise, by presidents who stared each other down and blinked at the right moment. Stanislav Petrov did not know he was right. He guessed. And the thing that should genuinely disturb us, the thing that stays with you long after the details fade, is that we should not find it remotely comforting that the world was saved by a guess. Because what Petrov's story actually reveals is the terrifying fragility of the systems we built to manage our most destructive capabilities. A satellite system that cost billions, fooled by clouds. A verification algorithm designed to prevent exactly this kind of error, failed. A chain of command that was supposed to catch human error at every level that would have functioned